The day started out as any normal day. It was a beautiful day, I remember. And my kids were a little bit older. I had my oldest one, Jeanette, just started a job in Westchester as a teacher, and she left for the day. And my middle daughter, Beth, was a junior in college, and she just had left after breakfast for the day. And my son had left. He was a junior in high school, and he was gone for the day. And Toolie stayed with me and had some coffee, and he wound up leaving for a side job. He did carpet on the side, and he left for Westchester as well. And it was probably about a little after 9, I guess. And I remember my sister-in-law calling me, and she told me about the plane had hit the building. And I put the TV on, and total disbelief watching this, horror. And while I'm on the phone with her, the second plane hit. And it was total disbelief that this could happen in this country, that something like that would happen. And we went into panic mode. And of course, the first thing was, where are the kids? We have to get these kids home. We didn't know if this was just one of many things that were going to happen. And as I'm listening to the news, they're telling you about other planes and hijacked planes and so forth. And it was just sheer panic. And my first response was to get a hold of Toolie at first. He's my rock, and to get my kids home. And my sister-in-law asked me to go grab my niece and my nephew because they were in school as well. So unfortunately, with the plane hitting, the cell phones weren't really working that well, if you remember. So I was able to get a hold of Toolie, and for 2 seconds, and he saw what happened, and he said he's rushing down to the firehouse. He said, I don't know when I'll be able to talk to you, but I'm rushing down to the firehouse now, which was in the Bronx. So he left, and he said he was going to try to get a hold of Jeanette before he left because she was in Westchester as well. And I finally got a hold of her. And she said, Daddy told me to stay here on the bridge, on the other side of the bridge, because who knows what was going to happen. So it was sheer panic that she wasn't home. And then I wound up getting my other daughter, Beth, and she said she was going to go pick up my son. And she picked up my son, and I went and picked up my niece, and she also picked up my nephew that day. I went to the bank because I didn't know if there was going to be an issue with having no money or whatever. So I got into the ATM, and there was a line at the ATM, got home, and it was just sheer panic. And we just sat and waited to hear from Toolie that he was okay. When he got down to the firehouse, he gave me a call. He said that I'm here. He says, I'm going down. He says, we're all just kind of getting together, and we're going to head down in a little bit. So he went down there. He said he didn't know when he was going to call me again. By now, all the TV cameras were there. So our eyes were just glued to it. And my son wanted to go down. I convinced him, no, not to. He was just new onto the fire department over here in Nanuet. And he stayed here for now. And it was just panic because we didn't know what was going to happen to him. And I just watched the TV 24/7 just to see if we can hear anything or see anything. And I spoke to other wives, and their husbands were going down as well. And it was just so scary for those days, for those couple of days, that there was no contact. And I think that was a Tuesday, and probably on Thursday was the first time that I heard from him. And we were all just so scared. All the kids were scared and, just worried that we had no contact. And we were able to call the firehouse because there was somebody sitting in house watch there. And we at least were able to contact somebody that might have some sort of news, but they didn't hear anything. And then the next time that we saw him was on Sunday. He didn't come home until Sunday, and he came home. He wanted to see the kids and let them know that he was okay. And he came home with one of his friends, Fred Rock, and they went to get more clothes. And he kind of told a little bit of a story. He was very good at trying to keep everything separate at the very beginning from the horror. But he did say that there were horror stories of the buildings looking to collapse. So everybody would run when they were saying that the building was going to collapse, and that on the pile, it was just so scary that it was falling through. And unfortunately, he kind of told me a horror story about finding body limbs and body parts, and you don't know who it is. And he said that they would found like a hand, a finger. It was just horrible. So we were so scared about this, and I was talking to one of the other firemen's wives, and we were like, well, that horrible. And he was going back down that night. So what I did was I tattooed him, basically him and his friend Fred Rock, and I wrote their names and their badge numbers, FDNY, on their arms and on their legs. Just, I don't know, it just gave me some sort of comfort to know that at least, God forbid something would happen to him, that at least his name was there or whatever. I would be able to get something back, because he was just so upset that there were these body parts that nobody could find out who they are. And he was down there for a couple of days more, and he would sleep at the church, he said. And I tried to keep the kids calm, and my son was itching to go down there, and he finally went down a couple of weeks later with him, and he did a couple of tours with him down there. And it was just so horrible, because that was really the last day that I knew my husband without having issue, the PTSD and so forth. And how do you unsee that? You're never the same. You're never the same. And he never was. He was very good at hiding it, but he was never the same. But for me, it was just pure panic. It was just so scary with all the kids and trying to keep them calm. And it wasn't like they were younger children, so you can just say, everything's fine, everything fine. They were older. And they would hear, obviously they were adults and they could hear things. And there was no way really to keep them from the news and everything like that. So they heard. And it was just terrible.
When you say Toolie was never the same, in what way was he different?
You could see like the PTSD, you could see what he saw. It was kind of bizarre. Like, he would always hesitate a little bit talking and saying things about that, and you could see it in his eyes, like what he saw down there. I mean, they weren't like people who were in like, the military where they plan on going into a war. They were just thrown into this. And these are firemen and cops and first responders. They're not, trained to see this. They go into fires and things like that. And just to see this, he really suffered with it. And he was very good at hiding it, extremely good at hiding it. And he used to, try to keep everybody calm and not really tell stories. But he wound up, they actually had stopped everybody going down there for a while. And they said, we just want people down there for 30-day intervals. And they came up to him and they said that they wanted him to stay on. So him being Toolie, he of course agreed. So he was basically down there from the very start for the whole 9 months, almost every day. And he stayed down there, and when he would come home, he would just come home to see the kids and, let them know that he was okay and that everything was fine. And he would try to calm everybody down, which I was very grateful for, because he was the rock and I was just the nervous Nelly. And, it was very stressful because, I would be like, no, it's okay. Daddy's fine. Daddy's fine. And they're adults and they're like, don't tell me that. And it was just hard. It was just very difficult. And he always suffered with the PTSD, especially now. It would be the second week of August, and it would be like clockwork. And that's when it would start. And it would go until the 12th, and that would be it. And then after the 12th, totally fine. But it would be this, these 3-4 weeks that would be crazy. And it's kind of like he lost his innocence. It's kind of, a weird way to put it. And I don't know how to put it into words, but you can't unsee that. You can't unsee any of that.
Well, what was that like for you?
It was sad. I felt so bad for him that he had to go through that. It was, I tried my best anytime, when he came home, I tried, whatever you wanted, I took care of him. I made sure that he had like a good meal when he came home. And I tried to, just listen to him when he came home. What did you want to talk about? I didn't tell him anything that was going on at home. I let him talk. Um, Finally it got to the point where it was okay, you have 15 minutes, tell me, and that's it. And I need you, I want you to relax after that. And it was, it was hard. Like I tried to keep him calm. And he, as I said, he was very easy, at hiding the PTSD, but it was hard. It was hard. And I felt
When
bad.
when did he first start getting sick from the 9/11 toxins?
He actually had nodules. He was checked out because every year they would go for their medical, and he had nodules in his lungs. And he had a little bit of a breathing issue, and he was giving a nebulizer and he was giving inhalers. Um, and he would always be checked, and that was probably around 2003 when that started. He wasn't incapacitated, that he couldn't do his job, so he still was on the job. And he was diagnosed in 2012, July 18th of 2012, with bile duct cancer. And he really had no symptoms prior to that. And maybe a couple of days before that, he was a little bit nauseous and a little bit ill, but that was really it.
And what was the stage of the cancer at this first symptom where he was diagnosed?
They didn't give us a stage on it, which I was kind of grateful for, because you hear the name, you hear a stage. And I remember when the doctor had come in, we wound up being at Sloan the whole day, and they did every single test possible. And my sister-in-law, his sister, was a nurse down there, and she handpicked every single doctor, which was amazing. And he had the absolute best care. And that whole day, he had every single test under the stars. And the doctor came in finally at 7 o'clock that night and gave us the diagnosis. And he had said it was bile duct cancer. And he said it was tentatively curable if he was able to have a liver resection, if he was up to that. And it really never registered that, because he's such a strong guy, he's a fireman, that it would basically, he would succumb to that.
And he succumbed how much
Yeah.
later?
4.5 years. And the prognosis on his cancer, on bile duct cancer, is only a few months. And he was able to have the surgery, and he had the surgery in November. He had a liver resection. They took out 3/4 of his liver, and he went up and down. And probably about 6 weeks after that, they sent him home January 3rd to basically come home and die. They said there was nothing more that they could do in January of 2013. And a miracle on top of a miracle. I read everything and I learned everything about bile duct cancer. I put him on a low protein diet. I did everything possible. And a miracle happened. There's no other word for it, a miracle, that he wound up, the next time he had his labs done, his numbers started getting better and better and better. And he actually did get so much better. And he was probably in May was when his numbers finally reached the normal level. And he wasn't, his bilirubin was 80 point something, which was the highest that they've ever seen. And they were questioning why he was even still walking around. And it was just amazing. And he was good for quite a while. And he wound up having radiation. and the radiation unfortunately burnt a hole in his duodenum. And when the cancer came back, he went for chemo, and it unfortunately had to bleed. So he was constantly bleeding. And he had about 75 from January until August when he passed, and December. He had probably about 75 blood transfusions. It was so scary, but he was a champ. He was so wonderful about it. He had two pulmonary embolisms in between this. He suffered with encephalopathy, which is something where you don't remember things and you're very fuzzy. Um, and he passed in December of 2016. And
Did he ever express any regrets, or what was his attitude dealing with all of this?
he had a wonderful attitude, and he was so grateful. Um, in going back when a lot of the men were dying and getting sick in 2009, 10, he was so grateful. I remember him being just so grateful and happy that he was spared not getting cancer. And then when he did, he was actually very strong about it. And he was a fighter, and he said, "This is not going to get to me." And he was such a fighter, and they were all amazed that he was around for 4.5 years. And he fought, and he never regretted it. I had asked him, and it's the same thing, like everybody asks him, "Would you do it again?" And he said, "In a heartbeat, in a heartbeat." And he was so proud, and I was so proud of him to go down there. He was a hero.
Your son spent not much time there, but he did spend time there when it was at the most dangerous point. How is his health?
His health is good. I have him registered. That was scary. I'm so proud of him going down there as well, because that was something that was part of history. And that was Toolie also wanted him to go down there because it's something where he could turn around to his children and say, "This is history. I was down there." And I keep an eye on him, and so far he's good. I have him registered, and he's going to start going to the 9/11 monitoring. But knock wood, he's doing good.
I just want to ask you this. It might sound like a strange question. Do you ever feel Toolie with you?
I do. I do. My kids laugh at me all the time. I'm going to tell you a little secret I have here. I have a locket here, and right after he had passed, he had this big, huge, thick mustache, the typical fireman mustache. And I cut a couple of pieces of the hair, and I actually have his hair in here in a locket that I carry with me all the time. And I do feel him. I do feel him all the time. And um, he's just so missed. He's just so missed. And I know he's here.
Thank you.